Sasquatch, The Legend of Bigfoot, was released in 1976. Directed by Ed Ragazzino, who mostly did voice work for video games such as 3D Ultra Pinball: The Lost Continent, and, for better or for worse, The Adventures of Willie Beamish. This is the only movie he has directed. The film opens, like most Bigfoot movies from the time, with washed-out scenery views overlooking pine trees and lakes, but this does set the mood for what type of movie we are about to see. The action starts right away with a POV shot of Bigfoot running through the woods while various animals scatter. The scene is quite effective and makes you want to keep watching, if only to see what Bigfoot looks like. However, for now, all you get to see is a shadow. Next, we get a newspaper montage. At the end, the narrator talks about the famous Patterson-Gimlin footage and claims to take all the Bigfoot stories, feed them into a computer, and have the computer print out what it thinks Bigfoot should look like. The image matches what's on the famous film, thus proving it was not a hoax. Now, we are introduced to the plot of the story. A group of men plan to track down the Sasquatch, tranquilize it, and then implant a device to track it. A very scientific approach to a Bigfoot movie, and not half bad. They plan on taking the trip from early spring to late fall. Quite an investment for all involved. It's at this point we are introduced to the characters of the film. Chuck Evans is the leader of the expedition. Dr. Paul Markham is the scientist of the film, and you see him taking measurements of every leaf and then eventually the Bigfoot prints. Hank Parshall is a tracker whose skills will be used once they get the scent of the Bigfoot. Josh Bigsby is a local mountain man they use as a guide, and Tekka Blackhawk is the film's token Native American. Pretty sure the actor is 0% Native American, but it gets a pass. He knows the Bigfoot lore. Barney Snipe is the team's cook, and really only in the film for comic relief. Finally, there's Bob Vernon. He is a reporter and a Bigfoot skeptic. The movie takes place in British Columbia, although it was filmed in Oregon, and Oregon has some very nice views. Especially in the beginning, the film feels a bit like a nature documentary, which is not a bad thing at all. It makes you appreciate the vast wilderness that Bigfoot could live in. The first real action is a mountain lion attack. The stunt work is impressive and I'm sure risky for the time. Although it looks like the animal handler just threw a mountain lion onto the group, they're lucky no one was injured working with an animal like that. About a half hour in, we get our first Bigfoot story, and this is what the movie gets right. Guys sitting around a campfire telling creepy Bigfoot stories. Josh tells the story of some old gold miners' encounter with the creature. The story is based off of Fred Beck's tale back in 1924. The small group of gold miners had some good luck that day and went back to their cabin to celebrate. On their way back, they hear footsteps in the woods. This is our first glimpse at what the Sasquatch looks like. At night, the Bigfoot family attacks the cabin. The scene is quite effective and can be scary at parts. The Bigfoot throw rocks while the men fire their rifles. Eventually, the sun rises and the attack is over. After that night, people refer to that canyon as Ape Canyon, which is an actual place in Mount St. Helens. By the middle of July, the team reaches the Pecatow River. Beyond that is thick brush, which is where the Bigfoot is said to live. The next Bigfoot story is told by Hank the Tracker. It was originally told by Teddy Roosevelt, who heard it from the source, so he claims. Two men were trappers in the mountains in Idaho. In order to get to a good lake to trap beaver, they had to go to a location where a man was killed by a wild beast. They set up camp and placed their traps. When they got back to their camp, they were surprised to see it was destroyed, and there were large footprints all over the campsite. It was already dark, and too late to make it back to the horses, so they rebuilt their camp and went to bed. Around midnight, they were awoken by a large black beast at their campsite. A man got his gun and fired a shot, but missed the Bigfoot. The men didn't get much sleep that night. In the morning, they gathered up their traps, and by noon had stopped worrying about the beast. At that point, one of the men volunteered to get the last of the traps, while the other went back to the camp to pack up. Not hearing anything from his friend for a while, the other went looking for him. When he found him, he was dead, neck broken like a twig. Finally, they make it across the river and through some of the thick brush. So they decide to camp in the area, and that night is when the team finally have their first encounter with a Sasquatch. Not seeing it, but hearing it. It is interesting to note that the Bigfoot screams heard are supposedly real yells recorded in the wild. The film has done its research. It references the typical Bigfoot stories, the rotten smell, and the forest being quiet.
Chuck?
Yeah. What is it?
Something's approaching. Listen. Can you hear anything?
No. It's dead quiet.
That's what I mean. Something is approaching, or it's already here.
They search the area the next morning for tracks, and find them. Using the dogs to hunt down the Bigfoot, they follow the trail to the next campsite, which is where they think is the inner domain for the Bigfoot, and their best chance to tranquilize the beast. They set up camp and start setting traps, which is, for the time, some pretty sophisticated equipment, setting up a perimeter with wire to track the Bigfoot.
This is our outer perimeter. We've set it about 300 yards back into the trees. Corresponds with this amber row of lights. This is our inner perimeter. It's about 50 yards away from the end of the meadow. Corresponds to this white row of lights. Anytime he moves through any one of these gates, corresponding light will go on. If he moves into the inner perimeter, he should be close enough for one of our men to get a shot at.
The final attack happens that night, and is the first time the team gets a good look at the creatures. The scene is shot dark, as it is nighttime. However, you can still mostly make out what's happening. At this point, you can tell it's a guy in a suit, and for the time and budget, that's acceptable. However, There are some shots of the Bigfoot's face where you can see that makeup was used, and it's not bad. It's a shame it was set at night and so quick. A few tranquilizer darts are shot, but they all miss. The Bigfoots again throw rocks and logs, and the scene reminds you of the gold miners' attack. The attack ends with a yell, and the Bigfoot retreat. There are several injuries to the group, but no fatalities.
It is done. We can go home.
The film ends with the group packing up and riding away on their horse. The narrator ends on a light note that even though they were unable to capture or tranquilize the beast, they learned a lot and hope to come back next year. The film ends with a shadow shot of Bigfoot in the trees, resembling the movie's poster. Sasquatch, The Legend of Bigfoot, is an entertaining Bigfoot movie. The music, composed by Al Capps, is very effective. However, you must be in the mindset for a nature documentary. But the Bigfoot stories and the finale deliver. Definitely not the worst Bigfoot movie out there. I'd give it 3 out of 4 dancing gold miners.